In a quiet town in Lokoja, Nigeria, where the hum of life often masked the silent struggles beneath, lived an average-life couple bound not just by love, but by the weight of survival. Alex was more than Dema's husband. He was her rock, her calm in every storm. But even the strongest bonds are tested when life demands more than they have to give. The night was cold, the air thick with the weight of an approaching storm. The car sped through the empty streets, its tires screeching against the wet asphalt. Inside, Dema clutched her stomach, her body trembling with pain. Sweat coated her forehead, and her breath came in sharp, shallow gasps. "Hold on, Dema. We're almost there." Alex's voice was tense, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. Dema's fingers dug into the seat. The contractions were unbearable. It felt like her body was splitting apart, like she was being torn open from the inside. They swerved into the hospital driveway, and before the car even came to a full stop, Alex threw open the door and ran to the other side. "Help! Somebody help us!" he yelled as he flung the car door open. A team of nurses rushed toward them, their faces tight with urgency. Dema barely registered what was happening as they lifted her onto a stretcher. The pain was deafening. Voices blurred, lights flashed above her as they wheeled her down the hospital corridor. She felt Alex's grip on her hand, heard his voice, desperate, pleading. "Stay with me, Dema. Stay with me." Then, a sharp stab of pain shot through her body, and everything went black. Hours later, when Dema's eyes fluttered open, the room was quiet. The pain was still there, but it was dull now, numbed by medication. She turned her head slowly and saw Alex sitting in the chair beside her bed, his hands clasped together, his eyes staring blankly at the floor. She tried to speak, but her throat was dry. Then she remembered. Her baby. Her chest tightened as panic surged through her. "Alex," her voice was barely a whisper, but he heard it instantly. He looked up, his eyes dark and filled with something she couldn't quite place. "Where's the baby?" she asked, her voice trembling. Alex hesitated. That hesitation sent a chill down her spine. Before he could answer, the door creaked open, and the doctor stepped in. His face was unreadable, professional, but there was something in his eyes, something that made Dema's heart pound harder against her ribs. "Mrs. Dema," the doctor began, his voice calm but firm. "Your baby, she's alive. But there are complications." The room spun. Dema's fingers gripped the hospital sheets. "Complications?" she echoed, her voice barely audible. The doctor exhaled. "Your baby is struggling to breathe on her own. She has severe respiratory distress. We've placed her on oxygen, but it's critical." Dema's breath hitched. Oxygen. Critical. She felt Alex tense beside her, his fists clenching. "What does that mean?" Alex asked, his voice sharp. "How long will she need the oxygen?" The doctor's lips pressed into a thin line. "We can't say for certain. Some babies recover within days, others, weeks. It depends on how she responds to treatment." Dema's hands trembled. "Weeks?" "The medical bills," the doctor continued cautiously, glancing between the two of them. "Keeping her on oxygen for an extended period will be expensive." "Have you spoken with the hospital's financial department?" Alex let out a harsh breath. "We can barely afford this room, and now you're telling us we need to pay for weeks of treatment?" The doctor remained professional. I understand this is difficult, but the reality is, without oxygen, your baby won't survive. The words hit like a hammer. Dema turned to Alex, searching his face for reassurance, for hope. But all she saw was the weight of despair crushing him. Her heart pounded. She had carried this child for 9 months. She had felt every kick, every movement. She couldn't let go now. I don't care how much it costs, she whispered. She's our daughter, Alex. We have to save her. Alex stood abruptly, running his hands through his hair. Dema, be realistic. Where are we supposed to get that kind of money? Who's going to help us? We'll find a way, she said firmly, her voice shaking but determined. We always do. Alex laughed bitterly. Do we? He turned away, shaking his head. We're drowning, Dema. And now you want us to sink deeper? Her throat tightened. She's our child. And what if she doesn't make it? The words flew out of his mouth before he could stop them. Silence. The air in the room grew heavy. Dema felt her world tilt. Don't you dare say that. Alex exhaled harshly, looking at her with tired, hollow eyes. I'm saying the truth. We can't afford this, Dema. We never could. She stared at him, her heart breaking into pieces. How could he even think that way? The doctor cleared his throat. I'll give you both a moment, he said before stepping out of the room. The moment the door shut, Alex turned back to Dema, his expression unreadable. I need to think, he muttered. And then, before she could say anything, he walked out. Dema watched him go, a sinking feeling settling deep in her chest. And for the first time, she feared he might not come back. The room was empty. Dema sat on the hospital bed, staring at the door where Alex had just walked out. Her heart pounded against her ribs, her breath coming in shallow gasps. He wouldn't leave her, not like this. He was just overwhelmed. He needed air. He would come back. He had to. Minutes turned to hours. The walls of the hospital seemed to close in on her, the distant beeping of machines a cruel reminder of the life hanging in the balance, their daughter's life. The doctor came in again, a file tucked under his arm. His expression was neutral, but his eyes held the weight of someone who had seen this before, families falling apart under the pressure of medical bills, fathers breaking under responsibilities they couldn't carry. Dema straightened, forcing herself to be strong. She wouldn't break. Not yet. Doctor, have you seen my husband? She asked, her voice thin. The doctor hesitated. Not since earlier. Her stomach twisted. She reached for her phone and dialed Alex's number again. It rang and rang, but there was no answer. He wouldn't just leave. Would he? She swallowed, pushing back the panic rising in her chest. The doctor sighed, placing the file on the table. Dema, I need to talk to you about your daughter's treatment. Her throat went dry. Is she getting worse? No, but she isn't improving either. She still needs oxygen, and that means the bills will keep increasing. We need to discuss how you're going to cover the cost moving forward. Dema nodded quickly. I'll find a way. Just don't stop her treatment. We won't, the doctor assured her, but there was hesitation in his voice. I just need you to be prepared for the financial burden. It's not just about medical bills. It's about time. Some babies stay in this condition for months. Sometimes they don't. He stopped himself, as if realizing that saying it out loud would break her. But she had already thought about it. The possibility. The fear. The nightmare of losing her daughter. Dema straightened her back. She's going to live. The doctor studied her for a moment, then gave a small nod before walking out. The second he left, Dema exhaled sharply. She reached for her phone again, her fingers trembling as she dialed Alex's number. Still no answer. She sent a message. Alex, please come back. Our daughter needs you. I need you. She waited. And waited. But the reply never came. The breaking point. The next morning, Dema woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing. Her heart leaped. Alex. She grabbed the phone quickly. But it wasn't him. It was a message from the bank. Her account balance was dangerously low. Panic flooded her. She had spent so much already. The jewelry, the savings, everything was draining fast. Then, as if the universe wanted to break her even more, the door opened and the doctor walked in. His expression was unreadable, but she knew something was wrong. Dema, your husband was here. Her breath caught. Alex? Yes. He came earlier before you woke up. He spoke with me about the hospital bills. The doctor paused, choosing his words carefully. He said he couldn't afford it anymore. Dema's head spun. What? What do you mean? The doctor exhaled. He asked me what would happen if we took the oxygen off your daughter. The words punched her in the chest. No, she whispered. I told him we couldn't do that unless you both agreed. But he said, the doctor hesitated again. He said he wanted to be removed from the situation. That if you refused to listen to him, then he was done. Dema's entire world shattered. Her fingers curled into fists. You're lying. The doctor's face softened. I wish I was. A lump formed in her throat. Where is he now? The doctor shook his head. He left, Dema. She felt something inside her break, something that could never be put back together again. The doctor placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry. Dema's hands trembled as she clutched the hospital sheets. He really left. He walked out on her. On their daughter. For the first time since this nightmare began, she felt truly alone. The silence in the hospital room was deafening. Dema sat frozen on the edge of the bed, her mind refusing to accept what the doctor had just told her. Alex was gone. He had walked out on her. Walked out on their baby. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms as she whispered to herself, this is not happening. He's coming back. But deep down, she knew the truth. He wouldn't come back. The doctor had already left the room, giving her space to process the reality of her situation. The beeping of the monitors filled the air, each sound a cruel reminder of the battle her daughter was still fighting. She turned her gaze toward the crib where her baby lay, tiny, fragile, and still dependent on the oxygen keeping her alive. Tears welled up in Dema's eyes as she reached out to touch the glass. It's just you and me now, she whispered. But I promise, I won't leave you. Never. A life she can't afford. Days turned into weeks. Dema had sold almost everything she owned. Her wedding ring. Her gold earrings. Even the expensive watch Alex had once gifted her on her birthday. But it was never enough. Every time she walked into the doctor's office, she dreaded hearing the words, the bills are increasing. And they always were. One afternoon, she sat in the hospital's waiting area, staring blankly at the white walls. Her body was weak from lack of sleep, her stomach empty from skipping meals to save money. She had no family. No relatives. No one to run to. And Alex? Not a single message. Not a single call. It was as if he had ceased to exist. She thought about asking for loans, but who would give her money? She had nothing left as collateral. And the worst part? The doctor had been honest with her, babies in her daughter's condition rarely survived. But she refused to believe it. Her daughter would live. She had to. The hardest decision. In the second month, the inevitable happened. The doctor called Dema into his office. She entered slowly, her heart pounding against her ribs. The doctor exhaled, removing his glasses. Dema, we need to talk about your options. She already knew what was coming. The oxygen bills are piling up. And if we're being realistic, you might lose everything if you keep this up. Dema swallowed hard. I don't care. As long as my baby is breathing, I'll find a way. The doctor looked at her with pity. I admire your strength, but I've been in this profession for years. And I need you to be prepared for the worst. Dema's lips trembled. She wanted to scream. To fight. To do anything but accept what he was saying. You're asking me to give up? She whispered. I'm asking you to think about yourself too. She let out a shaky breath. Let me stay with her tonight, she finally said. Just one last night. The doctor hesitated, then nodded. I'll allow it. As she left his office, she felt numb. Her heart ached in ways she never thought possible. That night, Dema sat beside her baby's crib, her fingers gripping the tiny hand that barely moved. I'm sorry, my love, she whispered. I tried. I really did. She sobbed quietly, her tears soaking the hospital sheets. She didn't know how long she sat there till it was morning already, but at some point, she felt a presence beside her. She looked up and found one of the nurses staring at her with glassy eyes. You're a strong mother, the nurse said softly. Not many would have fought this hard. Dema shook her head. I'm not strong. I'm just desperate. The nurse sighed. Sometimes, those are the same thing, you just have to be strong. The nurse then added, the doctor needs your presence in his office. Immediately she heard this, she knew it was time. This made her shed more tears as the nurse held her hands while heading to the doctor's office. While in the doctor's office, Dema was made to sign some documents after that, which the doctor told her it was time to take oxygen off the baby. Just as she was about to respond, the doors to the doctor's office opened. A police officer walked in, his arms carrying a tiny bundle wrapped in a cloth. The hospital staff, Dema, and the doctor turned to look. The officer approached the doctor's desk and spoke in a firm voice. I am Inspector Kingsley Anthony. We found a baby abandoned at the hospital gate. Dema's breath hitched. A baby? The doctor asked, confused. Abandoned? The officer nodded. Whoever left the child didn't leave a note. We don't know where it came from. We came across the baby while on a patrol last night with my team at the entrance of the hospital, the officer said. Dema stared at the small bundle in his arms. Why did this feel like more than just a coincidence? After many conversations between the doctor and the officers prepared to leave with the baby. Dema's lips moved before she could stop them. Please, leave the baby with me. Everyone turned to look at her. The officer frowned. What? She swallowed, her voice breaking. I'll take care of the baby. The room fell silent. The doctor hesitated but then stepped forward. She's a mother who just gave birth. And she's about to lose her own child. He turned to the officer. Maybe this is fate. The officer studied Dema for a long moment. Then, finally, he handed her the baby. Dema's hands trembled as she took the small bundle. She pulled the cloth back slightly and gasped. It was a boy. Her heart clenched as tears streamed down her face. Was this the universe giving her a second chance? Or was this just another cruel twist in her story? The tiny baby boy in Dema's arms barely made a sound. His breathing was soft, steady, nothing like her daughter, who was still fighting for every breath inside the hospital room. Dema wiped her tears, staring at the baby. Was this a cruel joke from fate? Just hours ago, she had accepted that she was losing her child. And now, she was holding another. The police officer sighed, his voice gentle. If you take this baby, you will be responsible for him. Are you sure you can handle it? Dema nodded slowly, though her heart screamed with uncertainty. She had nothing left. No money. No family. And soon, maybe no daughter. But as she looked down at the baby boy, she felt something stir inside her. I don't know how, but I will take care of him. The doctor watched her with an unreadable expression before finally speaking. Then let's handle the legalities tomorrow. With that, the police left. But the moment they were gone, the doctor turned to her with a serious expression. Now, let's take off the oxygen from your daughter. A final farewell? Dema's legs felt weak as she walked back into the children's ward. The nurses were already waiting, their faces filled with pity. The doctor gave her a small nod, signaling it was time. She sat beside her baby girl, her voice shaking as she whispered, I love you. I love you more than life itself. She touched the baby's forehead, her tears dripping onto the tiny body. The doctor gave her a moment before stepping forward. Dema, it's time. With a deep breath, he reached for the oxygen mask. And then, a single tear rolled down the baby's cheek. Dema gasped. Doctor, do babies in comas cry? The doctor paused, his eyes widening as he turned back to the baby. A second tear slipped from the baby's closed eyes. Then, a shuddering breath. The machines beeped erratically as the tiny chest rose and fell, rose and fell. And then, as if time itself had stopped, her daughter's eyes fluttered open. For the first time in 2 months. A soft, weak smile stretched across the baby's lips. Dema screamed. Tears of shock, of disbelief, of pure joy spilled down her face as she grabbed her daughter's tiny hand. She's awake! She's awake! The nurses gasped. The doctor rushed forward, his hands trembling as he checked the baby's vitals. His voice was hoarse when he spoke. This is impossible. But it wasn't. It was a miracle. Dema sobbed uncontrollably, cradling the 2 babies against her chest. One born from her body. One given to her by fate. In a single day, she had lost everything. And in a single moment, she had gained everything back. A new beginning. By the next evening, the hospital was buzzing with news of the miracle baby. Other doctors and nurses came to see the little girl who had defied the odds. Some whispered it was a medical mystery. Others called it divine intervention. Dema didn't care what it was. All she knew was that her daughter had come back to her. The doctor approached her, his eyes filled with something she had never seen before, respect. Dema, we'll cover the rest of the medical bills and we will take in touch with the Minister of Health of this state to grant you refuge and financial support to start life again. Some of the nurses, doctors and workers here have decided to give financial support as well, which we discussed during our meeting immediately after the miracle of your baby. She gasped. What? He smiled. Consider it a gift, for a mother who never gave up. Dema fell to her knees, overwhelmed with gratitude. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe again. But even as she smiled, a question lingered in her mind. Where was Alex? And who had abandoned this baby boy at the hospital gate? Because something told her this was no coincidence. What happened to Alex? The warm glow of morning sunlight filtered through the curtains of DPO's office as Dema carefully signed the final documents. The adoption process had been long and exhausting, but now, it was official. Ethan and Nia were legally her children. Looking at their names on paper filled her with an overwhelming sense of pride. So, it's finally official? Dema asked, her voice steady but her heart pounding. "Yes," the DPO confirmed, stamping the last sheet. "Ethan is legally yours." Dema exhaled, relief washing over her. 20 years later. It had been years since that fateful night when she found the abandoned baby at the hospital. Now, she had 2 children, Ethan and Nia, and she was determined to give them the best life possible. Years passed, and under Dema's care, the children flourished. Ethan, once a timid boy, had grown into a confident and intelligent young man. Nia, with her bright eyes and unbreakable spirit, excelled in school. Now in their final year of secondary school, they stood on the threshold of adulthood. One day, the school announced an excursion to the seaport, a trip that sent waves of excitement through the students. Ethan and Nia eagerly brought home the permission slip, pleading with their mother to let them go. Dema hesitated. "I don't know if I'm comfortable with this. Maybe I should go with you." "Mom, please," Ethan insisted. "We're adults. We'll be careful." After much convincing, she agreed, arranging for the family driver to take them. The house buzzed with excitement as Ethan and Nia packed their bags the night before. "This is going to be fun." Nia grinned. Ethan chuckled, throwing an arm over her shoulder. Finally, a break from school stress. The next morning, however, a problem arose. Their family driver, Mr. Peter, received an urgent call. His mother was critically ill. "I'm so sorry, madam," he told Dema. "I need to go see her." Dema sighed. She had an important business meeting that morning with a company she has been hoping to collaborate with for years, and she couldn't stand a chance of missing it. "Mom, don't worry," Ethan spoke up. "I can drive. I've practiced enough with the driver and I've been driving for a while now. I'll take Nia, and we'll be fine." Dema hesitated. She had always trusted Ethan, but a part of her felt uneasy. Finally, she relented. "Fine. But drive carefully. No speeding, no distractions." Ethan beamed. "Of course, Mom, Dad, I got this." Ethan assured her with a smile. Dema, dressed for an important business meeting, looked at the clock anxiously. As Dema hurried off to her meeting, the siblings excitedly got ready for their adventure. The day at the seaport was everything they had hoped for: majestic ships, endless ocean views, and laughter with classmates. By the time they began their journey home, the sky had begun to darken, casting long shadows over the roads. As Ethan drove through a busy street, his phone rang. "It's Mom," he muttered, glancing at the screen. "Don't pick it up," Nia warned, sensing his distraction. But it was too late. His fingers instinctively reached for the phone. The sharp screech of tires. A flash of movement. A sickening thud. Silence. Ethan and Nia sat frozen in horror, their breaths shallow. A man lay sprawled on the road, motionless. The distant wail of sirens broke the silence. Within minutes, a crowd gathered, voices rising in panic. The police arrived, and before they could fully comprehend what had happened, Ethan and Nia found themselves in the back of a police van. With trembling hands, Ethan dialed his mother's number after he pleaded with the police officer to allow him to do so. "Mom!" His voice cracked. "We're at the police station. I hit someone." A sharp inhale from the other end. Then a single, firm reply. "I'm coming." Dema's hands tightened around the steering wheel as she sped toward the police station. Her heart pounded against her ribs, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. It was a 2-hour drive, but it felt like an eternity. When she arrived, the officers led her to the DPO's office. To her surprise, it was the one someone she knew. The DPO turned. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "Dema?" She froze. The same man who had helped her legalize and finalized Ethan's adoption years ago was now standing before her. He sighed. "Your son hit a pedestrian." Dema's eyes darted to Ethan and Nia, seated in the corner, looking shaken. "Is the man alive?" she asked. The DPO hesitated. "No updates from the hospital yet." He then added, "Could that be the boy we rescued some years back?" "Yes, he is the one," Dema said. Dema exhaled shakily. "Can I see my kids?" He studied Dema for a moment and nodded, signaling the officers to release them, and moments later, Ethan and Nia were released. The siblings clung to their mother, shaken but relieved. "It's late," the DPO advised. "You shouldn't drive home in this state. There's a guest house nearby, stay the night. We'll check on the victim tomorrow." That night, as they settled into the guest house, an unsettling thought gnawed at Nia. "Mom," she asked cautiously, "you didn't pay any bail bond, did you? And besides, the man seems to know Ethan, whereas this is our first time seeing him." Dema hesitated. "No. The DPO is an old friend. He knew you guys when you were little, and he was transferred out of our state, so we lost contacts." Something in her tone made Nia uneasy, but she didn't press further. The next morning, they arrived at the hospital. A nurse led them to the intensive care unit. Dema stepped inside, then gasped, her blood running cold. She knew that face. "Alex?" Her vision blurred, and the world tilted. Then, darkness. The cold hum of fluorescent lights filled the hospital room. Dema's head pounded as she forced her eyes open, her vision blurry. Her body ached from the impact, but the pain was nothing compared to the shock that paralyzed her when she saw him. Alex. His face was gaunt, his beard unkempt, and his clothes torn from years of hardship. He was nothing more than a shadow of the man he used to be. A mere barrow pusher now, stripped of the pride and wealth he once flaunted. The moment his eyes landed on Dema, his lips trembled, and tears spilled down his weathered cheeks. Without hesitation, he fell to his knees, his hands gripping the cold tiles beneath him. "Dema, please, forgive me." Silence. Thick. Suffocating. The police officers, nurses, Nia, and Ethan stood frozen, watching the scene unfold like a tragic play. Nia swallowed hard, her voice shaking. "Mom, who is this man?" Dema inhaled sharply, forcing herself to look into her daughter's confused eyes. "He is your father." A sharp gasp filled the room. Ethan took a step forward, his heart pounding. "Wait, what?" "Mom, you told us our dad was dead." Dema clenched her fists. The weight of her lie pressed down on her like an avalanche. She turned to Ethan, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ethan, my son. I'm sorry. I lied. Alex is Nia's father, but he is not yours." A deafening silence. Ethan's breath hitched. His legs felt weak as he gripped the doorframe for support. "So, Nia isn't my biological sister?" His voice cracked. Dema couldn't look at him. She couldn't bear to see the heartbreak on his face. "Then, who am I?" Ethan whispered, his voice laced with fear. No answer. Dema turned back to Alex, her jaw clenched. The years of buried rage boiled over as she spat, "You monster. You left me. You left us. I was in that hospital, alone, suffering with our newborn daughter, and you disappeared like a coward. I gave you everything, the cars, the comfort, the love, but when I needed you the most, you ran. You ran, Alex." Alex's shoulders shook as he bowed his head in shame. "I had no choice," he croaked. "I failed you, Dema. I failed all of you." He wiped his face roughly and continued, "When we were married for 3 years with no child, I lost myself. I had an affair." Nia staggered back. Dema's nails dug into her palms. "You what?" Alex's lips trembled. "She got pregnant first, and then 2 days later, you told me you were pregnant too. I didn't know what to do." She had no one, she was thrown out of her home. When you both gave birth at nearly the same time, I panicked. I had nothing. I couldn't take care of either of you. Dema's breath caught in her throat. Alex's voice was barely audible. So I ran. Ethan's fists clenched. His mind was spinning. His entire life suddenly felt like a lie. You abandoned her, Ethan said, his voice shaking with anger. You left her to suffer alone while you ran off with another woman? Alex hesitated. No, he whispered. I didn't run with her. By the time I went back, she was gone. A chilling stillness filled the room. Nia's lips parted, her voice barely a whisper. What happened to the baby? Alex looked up slowly, his face pale. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The room felt colder. The air heavier. Dema's heartbeat thundered in her ears. Alex, she said, her voice trembling. Where is that child? Alex's lips quivered, his eyes darting to Ethan for a split second before dropping to the floor. No one moved. No one spoke. Then, the door to the hospital room burst open. A woman stumbled in, unkempt, frail, and reeking of hardship. Her clothes were worn thin, her hair unkempt, and an unmistakable smell of sweat and suffering clung to her like a second skin. She rushed to Alex's side, wrapping her thin arms around him, oblivious to the heavy atmosphere in the room. Alex, she sobbed. Are you okay? Alex placed a trembling hand on her back, easing her onto the chair beside him. His voice was barely audible as he turned to her. Rita, you need to hear this, and then he told her who Dema was and his everything happened. Rita's confused eyes darted from Alex to Dema, then to the police officers standing nearby. Something was wrong. She fell to her knees before Dema, her lips quivering. Dema, she whispered. Please, forgive me. The room grew even quieter. Dema stiffened. Forgive you for what? Rita swallowed hard, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. For cheating with your husband, for destroying your marriage. Alex bowed his head in shame. Dema's hands curled into fists, but before she could speak, Rita turned to her husband, her voice breaking. Alex. I have a confession to make. Alex's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Rita swallowed the lump in her throat and stared at the floor. When we met, and I told you that I was robbed and the baby was taken away from me. I lied. Alex's body went rigid. His fingers gripped the edge of his chair as his heart pounded in his chest. You did what? He whispered. Tears spilled down Rita's face. I didn't know what to do. I was scared, Alex. I thought you wouldn't take care of me and my baby since your wife had just given birth. So, I abandoned him. A pin-drop silence followed. The DPO, who was then an inspector and was the one that saw the baby that night, stepped forward. Where did you leave the baby? Rita sniffled. At the gate of Gabriel's hospital, on a cold December night. Dema's heart slammed against her ribs. What date? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Rita rubbed her arms as if to protect herself from a ghostly chill. December 18th, around 11 p.m. I wrapped him in a blue carrier, and before I left, she paused, her voice cracking, I gave him a small burn on his right neck, so that one day, I could recognize him. The world seemed to stop. Dema gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Her body trembled as her mind raced. The blue carrier. The scar. The night the police brought a baby to the hospital, just as she was losing hope that Nia wouldn't survive. She turned, her gaze locking onto Ethan. Ethan. Her voice wavered. She's your mother. A sharp inhale. Ethan blinked, his lips parted, but no words came out. His entire body tensed as he processed the truth. His hands shook, his breath quickened. The woman he had never met. The woman who had abandoned him. She was standing right in front of him. Rita let out a strangled sob and reached for Ethan, but he stepped back. No, 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 no. He whispered, his entire being rejecting the truth. His heart pounded so hard it threatened to burst. This can't be happening. But it was. As the reality settled, pain, betrayal, and fate collided in one cruel twist. A bitter goodbye. Dema, strong despite the chaos, took control. She promised to take Rita back home, offering her a chance at redemption. But Alex had already reached the end of his road. The next morning, when they returned to the hospital, he was smiling. For the first time in years, he felt whole again. But his time was running out. The doctor pulled Dema aside, his expression grim. Alex is suffering from severe arrhythmia, he said softly. He doesn't have much time left. Dema's heart clenched. She turned to Alex, her eyes filling with tears. But before she could speak, he offered her a weak smile. I know, he whispered. Just take care of them. Dema squeezed his hand, knowing this was the last time she would see him alive. The next morning, the phone rang. Dema's fingers trembled as she picked it up. The doctor's voice was quiet, but the words hit her like a thunderbolt. Alex is gone. 2 days later, dressed in black, the family stood at the cemetery, watching as Alex was lowered into the ground. A man who had abandoned his family, only to find them again, too late. Ethan stared at the grave, his mind still battling the truth. Rita wept silently, the weight of her past sins crushing her. And Dema, strong as ever, stood still, watching the final chapter of their story close. Was Rita really worthy of Ethan's forgiveness? Did Alex deserve to die? Would you say Dema is the greatest mother of all times for taking Rita in with her?